Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast, where we explore our shared love for watching and discussing movies recorded in the late after-work hours, often in lieu of a good night's rest. I'm Madeline.
I'm Emilio.
And I'm Julian. The three of us are colleagues at a Midtown Manhattan music school. Yes, music is what brings us together, but movies are what keep us together, talking at the end of the night. So we've created some order to this ongoing trend by recording these conversations, considering an overarching theme while we cycle through 5 unique guidelines for engagement.
You can email us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. Seriously, we would absolutely love to hear from you. You can also follow us on Instagram. I don't think you'll be able to follow us on TikTok anymore, but if for some reason that is still a thing, you can do it there. We will have updates, highlights, clips, and other visual supplements to the audio that we record at Sleepless Cinematic Pod.
And in addition to these main episodes, we record and release bonus one-off episodes as we see fit. While we do this, you, the listener, can count on the three of us doing what we've grown to love, foregoing sleep for a discussion about movies every other week.
And this week, we continue our current cycle of movies featuring Best Supporting Acting Oscar winners with a category we call Two Shot, where we focus on 2 movies with some striking commonalities, in this case, some very obvious ones, and discuss their themes, characters, and other salient details that stood out to us.
And today we're doing a first, which is that we're discussing a classic film and its remake. That classic film would be West Side Story, the 1961 musical film adapted from the stage musical, directed by Robert Wise and Jerome Robbins. And we're also going to talk about its remake, released 60 years later in 2021, directed by Steven Spielberg. From an Oscars perspective, these films both feature Best Supporting Actress winning performances for the very same role, Anita, the partner of Bernardo, the leader of the Sharks. She is portrayed in 1961 by Rita Moreno and in 2021 by Ariana DeBose. And to discuss this pair of films, we have a very special and patient guest with us. If you know our podcast, you'll know that we all are music teachers who work at the same school, and our guest has the distinction of being the first student of any of ours to join us in one of these discussions. But don't let that fool you, because he is quite the authority on theater and specifically fight choreography for the stage, and is a distinguished teacher artist for the Barrow Group here in New York City. Notably for this conversation, our guest appeared as Officer Krupke and was the fight director for West Side Story when the stage musical was revived on Broadway in 2009. He has staged the fights for the Broadway and touring productions of The Last Ship, In the Heights, The Performers, The Miracle Worker, and several other NYC-based productions. It's been a pleasure to work with you on music and guitar so far, and it's been a real pleasure to have you join us today, Ron Piretti. Welcome to the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's a joy. This is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to this.
I'm so excited to get your perspective on these movies as someone who's just been so deep in it on stage.
On stage, yeah. The movies, I've seen them, but, stage is where I live. So
wonderful. Well, before we start introducing your perspectives on the stage, we don't want to confuse West Side Story with a couple of other films. Now, both of these films do talk about cardinal directions, but West Side Story is not to be confused with the film East Side, West Side, which is a film from 1949 directed by Mervyn Leroy, starring Barbara Stanwyck, James Mason, and Ava Gardner. That's quite the trio, about a love triangle between a businessman, his socialite wife, and his seductive old girlfriend. I've never seen it, but there's some pretty big names. It is not West Side Story.
Emilio, I don't know how far down you went on this cast list, but I also almost did this one, but didn't. But did you see that Nancy Reagan is also in this?
What?
Yeah. I mean, it's what you said, 1949? Is that it?
Yes.
Yeah. So definitely pre-First Lady days.
There we go.
Yeah. Well, on the topic of classic films and cardinal directions, this is also not to be confused with East of Eden.
Oh,
the Elia Kazan film from 1955, which is one of the 3 to feature someone who was a scene partner with one of the actresses in West Side Story, Natalie Wood. That would be, of course, the late, great James Dean, who appeared with her in Rebel Without a Cause. So there's a few degrees of connection here, but no, we are talking West Side Story, not East of Eden.
We should also say that West Side Story is not to be confused with The West Side Waltz, which is a 1995 film that I had not heard of, starring Shirley MacLaine as a surly pianist whose only friend is a violinist played by Liza Minnelli.
Oh, wow.
Also starring Jennifer Grey as Shirley MacLaine's housemaid, who is also an aspiring actress.
Oh.
Seems maybe fun. I don't think it's supposed to be good, but
It's a cast right there.
That's
It
the
is.
West Side Waltz, not West Side Story. There's not really waltzing in West Side Story. There's a lot of other dancing.
That's true. That's true. Well, this other movie could be considered a West Side Story and is also about young men in urban environments trying to find community and purpose in the world, prominently featuring music. This film is not to be confused with Straight Outta Compton, which is the 2016 film directed by F. Gary Gray, which is the story of the famous and influential rap group NWA, starring O'Shea Jackson, the son of actual NWA member Ice Cube, Jason Mitchell, and Corey Hawkins, amongst others.
Yeah, and LA is a city with, that's referred to as having an east and west side too.
There we go.
But no, we're not talking about LA. We're talking about New York and specifically the west side of New York.
100%.
Which
yes.
we're on. I mean, we're not that far up as this movie takes place in, but we're currently on the west side of Manhattan.
This is true.
Yeah.
Also, I want to let you know that West Side Story had a previous incarnation before they named it West Side Story and did it with the Sharks and the Jets. It was about I believe, I have to look it up for sure, but I think it was about the Catholics and the Protestants. It was called East Side Story.
I heard also Catholics and Jews was maybe...
Catholics and Jews.
I think
Catholics
that
and
was
Jews.
it.
Yeah,
But yeah,
that's
East
what
Side
it was.
Story.
And so then they revamped it with anyway.
And then maybe before that, there was some talk of Capulets and Montagues, right?
Way back in the day.
Oh, well, that's what it's
Right,
from.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's totally Romeo and Juliet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for that little bit of history there. Ron, I set it up a little bit before, but I would love to know a little bit about your personal history, maybe how you became an actor and worked in the theater. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I always wanted to do this. I used to watch a lot of TV as a kid. I wanted to be on TV, but didn't get there. But where I grew up in Connecticut, there was the American Shakespeare Festival. It was very famous. They had all like Katharine Hepburn, all these people used to work there. My dad had a gas station near there, so they all used to come in. I was a little too young for that, but that's where I saw my first play. Like, I don't know Morris Karnofsky is, but he was with the group theater.
Yeah.
So that's why I saw some of the first shows.
So cool.
And I just got smitten. I started doing children's theater, and I just started acting in high school and decided to do this as in college. So I went to college in Connecticut for a couple of years, and then went to college in San Antonio, Trinity University, because I found out a teacher was there, a guy named Paul Baker.
Okay.
He established the Dallas Theater Center.
Cool.
That's why I went down. I had a teacher who suggested I go down there. And then I came to New York, and and then I got to graduate school. I went to the Goodman School of Drama in Chicago, which is now DePaul University.
Right, yeah.
And before that summer, I was an apprentice at the New Jersey Shakespeare Festival. And we did Troilus and Cressida, so we'd get up every morning and fight with sword and shield. And that was great fun. And then for some reason, they put me in charge of the weapons. I don't know why. I'm 22 years old, and I'm in charge of the weapons. Because the shields were all fiberglass, we had to fix the fiberglass. If the swords broke, we had to fix that. So I was in charge of that for some reason. And then when I went to Goodman, I got involved. There was a fencing coach, and we did some fencing.
Cool.
And did a lot of, tumbling and stuff like that. And I just fell in love with stage combat.
Sweet.
So I choreographed Romeo and Juliet, actually, when I was there, played Paris, and choreographed a couple of other things when I was there. And just fell in love with it. And when I came back to New York, I saw a show called Night at the Fights.
That sounds fun.
And there was all these people fighting and sword fighting, which I love, and, doing all this stuff. So, I want to do that. So I got involved with that group.
Nice.
And we studied a lot together, and we formed a group called Fights Are Us. And so we used to go around the parks and sword fight, and I always died. I like to die. So we do that, pass the hat, and then go buy beer and stuff like that. And I just got more and more involved. In the meantime, I was still acting. I was, doing
Nice.
shows, and I was in an improv group, sketch comedy. I did some soaps. I did, did some background work on like Saturday Night Fever, a bunch of stuff like that. And I just kept doing it. And I got okay at it. I became a teacher of it and a fight director. And people started asking me about maybe choreographing for them. I did a fight to Randy Newman's song "Short People."
Great song, by the way.
Yeah, I love that song. And it was like two little nebbish people, and then they take off their thing and they beat up these big
my
guys.
goodness.
So anyway,
that's fantastic.
So and they put it on Nickelodeon. I kept after it, and then I got my shot on Broadway, which took a long time, but I got it. The first show I did was in the Heights.
Fun.
Cool.
That's amazing.
Because I used to know when I used to teach at a place in Florida, and one of the guys in Florida went to school with Lin-Manuel.
Oh, cool.
And they started, there was a thing called Backhouse Productions. But so I knew Lin-Manuel, and then when they went off Broadway, Tommy Kail asked me to do the fight for it. And then I, had a good 10 years on Broadway.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So that's, it's all about either sticking with it or luck. I don't know what it's about, to tell you the truth. And now I'm teaching a bunch. So
that's
sweet.
That's so cool, man.
So.
I also said it in the intro, but can you expand a little bit and tell us about the role that West Side Story has had in your life and your career? I know, we talked about the stage element of it and that you're very familiar with that. And also wondering if you have any memories of seeing the original film or the remake for that matter. But tell us a little bit about West Side Story for you.
Well, they were doing the production. They had a lot of Spanish in it, and they were doing it in Washington, D.C. And I had worked with the producers on a couple other shows. And they said, "Oh, come on down. Can you help?" Because they were being unsafe. Everybody was being unsafe.
Okay.
So they asked me, can you fix it? Well, I can do a little bit.
Sure.
I'll make it as safe as possible and see what happens. So I went down to D.C. and did that. And then when they came to Broadway, we went back into rehearsals again. And Arthur Lawrence, he said, "I just have one thing to say to you. No holds barred," which was great. So I could do whatever I wanted to do, really, and be as violent as I wanted to be. I hate violence, by the way. I don't like violence. But anyway,
in a controlled setting.
You only like fake violence.
Yeah, right. It's dancing, basically. It really
totally.
is dancing. It's all choreographed. So
particularly in this production, in West Side Story.
Well, but the fight is actually the knife fight. Jerome Robbins choreographed that.
Right.
So that's always the same that part. But the fights are usually different and different ways of doing it. Sometimes he would just say, "Just go for it," whatever. That's what I've heard. And like when they did a revival in the 80s, a lot of people went to the hospital because they were really going after it.
Wow. Okay.
It was a different time. He would pit the Sharks and the Jets against each other and make up stories about it. And they'd be angry at each other. They'd really fight on stage.
Oh, my.
So I had a friend who did the costume. So that's what I heard. Now, all this is hearsay. So I wasn't there, just so you know.
Okay. All right.
This is not fact.
Sure.
But this is what I've heard. Arthur Lawrence was great for me. He gave me my shot on Broadway, which was great. So I was doing the fight, and I had to go ask him something. And he went, "You're good." So after that, I could do whatever. And
I'm good. He said so.
Yeah, for him to say that, it was like, whoa, it made my day. I mean, Arthur Lawrence is like,
big deal.
One of the major movers of theater. I made it safer, made it more violent, and it's music. I mean, it's really choreographing the dance, but also the sound of it. When one thing happens, another thing happens. So it's about focus, drawing the focus, going one way and then going someplace else. Like with film, they can just do it with cameras. So I try to choreograph it so people are looking at it. So it's a whole story.
Sure. Makes sense. Man, I can't wait to get into some more discussion of that, about the fight stuff.
As far as the movies go, I mean, I saw it. I mean, it was like great. I mean, I loved it. The original movie. I like the remake too. I mean, some of it, I'm more of a purist, so but what I did like about the second is they made some things really clearer. Like the thing about the gun. Where did that come from? They made sense of it. And also, I liked that they brought in the reason for it. Like when they tore down all these buildings for Lincoln Center. And that's where the fighting was happening. And in the original movie, that's where they filmed it.
And this film, the 2021 one, has its premiere at Lincoln Center.
Right.
So it's a very
Right.
like full circle.
Kind of moment.
Right. The fights in the second one are a little more gritty, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
But I thought the fights in the first one were great. I mean, I loved them, And then they were pretty violent for that time, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. I don't know about you guys, and maybe we'll get into this, pretty soon. But West Side Story was a very early film that I saw, and so some of the violence depicted in that movie, maybe by today's standards, feels a little tame. But based on when it was exposed to me, like I remember these fights very well, very viscerally.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have like a super clear memory of seeing the original film for the first time. And I definitely saw it as a kid and probably several times. My family, we watched a lot of musicals and we watched a lot of classic musicals like this and like Singing in the Rain. Like, just feel like we constantly had stuff like that on when I was growing up. Like, my parents were constantly and still do constantly watch Turner Classic Movies just pretty much round the clock. So this is a movie that I think was fairly ingrained in me, but it's one that I haven't seen in at least 20 years. So I don't know that I had super strong, like vivid memories of it the way that you did, Emilio.
Yeah.
Yeah, my first time seeing it in probably about 20 years too. So maybe 25 at this point.
Yeah.
See, I used to grow up watching the Marx Brothers and Errol Flynn.
Yeah.
So that's where I got my sense of comedy and
Totally.
fighting, sword
Sure.
fighting. I liked all that stuff, So that's what I liked, So
How about you, Julian? What's your experience with this movie like?
So I think something that we all have in common here is that this is a movie that we go way back with, and that's true for me too. I remember I was in 4th grade, and one thing at my elementary school, one thing about 4th grade was that they required that the whole class would put together an opera. And I mean, they called it an opera, but I mean, like in all seriousness, it was a musical. I think those two are not the same thing. As kind of a reward for having gone through that process, we got to watch, it was kind of just like a highlight reel of West Side Story, but I didn't feel like the movie was ruined for me. I felt like I
imagine there are some things you don't want to show to a 9-year-old, like in a public school setting.
We did see The Rumble. We did watch that.
But also the rape. You didn't see the rape, I'm sure.
Yeah, I forgot.
Yeah. And I noted
that one is.
Like one thing when you go from original to remake, like that that scene happens in both movies, but it's only in the remake that they call it what it is.
Right.
In the first one, I mean, you see the action, but the language is not given to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And also, it's not only is that term used in the remake, it's Rita Moreno who says it.
Yeah, she definitely chastises them a little bit more than Doc does. He's more of a, hey, stop that.
Yeah.
Bad boys. Yeah. And she,
well, also in the original, they stopped it before anything can happen.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that happened in the remake too.
Yeah.
If memory serves, Doc's character there's like a sadness with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas, Rita Moreno has a lot more anger.
Yeah.
Right.
And even though, I mean, Rita Moreno in the remake, she's not playing Anita. I mean, in some ways, it feels like she might as well be playing old Anita there. That that spirit is still there. There's a fiery quality there that makes her in that moment a more powerful character than Doc. But to quickly just continue with like the legacy that this movie's had for me. So after seeing that highlight reel in elementary school, eventually I think I told my parents I had done that. They were enthusiastic about me having had that experience. And eventually later that same year, I watched the full movie from start to finish. And I think that just by happenstance, I didn't really watch it again in full until preparing for the conversation this week. But I always felt like I had seen it numerous times because the movie made such an impression. I think, whether it's the visuals or the songs or the arc of it all, I think it really sticks with you. And I think that, given that we are music teachers, the three of us co-hosts, one detail about how this movie has endured for me that I really think is worth pointing out is that sometimes in a private lesson, I'll find myself explaining modes to a student. And whenever I have to explain the Lydian mode, unfailingly, my demonstration for that is Maria.
Mine similarly is The Simpsons.
Those always come up together, but
also
like
good.
They do, yeah.
I think that Maria is a slightly easier point of reference. Not that The Simpsons is not very well known as it is, but the reason I choose Maria first is because it's not as laden with key changes as the Simpsons theme is.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Well, also the music is such part of the fabric of America.
Yeah.
you know?
It really is.
Yeah.
No pun
It's
intended.
amazing how ingrained these songs
Yeah.
are, I think, in our culture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
And somewhere.
Yeah.
you
Somewhere
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
tonight. That's another one too.
Which is
Yeah.
not to be confused with the Smashing Pumpkins song of the same name.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
these songs really just, I feel like you hear them once and they're in your head.
Totally.
A shout out to Leonard Bernstein's writing of
Mhm.
melodies here. Some of these melodies just immediately stick, whether it's from America or Maria or, when you're a jet, all that
Yeah.
sort of stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
One Hand, One Heart's another one. I've
Yeah.
done that one a lot at weddings, and that one
That makes
always
sense.
just that one crushes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I listened to a short commentary by Stephen Sondheim on the box set that I borrowed and did not steal from my parents. And it's like a kind of a truncated commentary by Sondheim before his death. And he talked a lot about obviously the lyric writing and his collaboration with Lenny, as he calls Bernstein, which is fun. But he talked a lot about with One Hand, One Heart, how he originally, when that song came to him, entirely dotted quarter notes. And he was like, this is impossible to write lyrics for because I really can only get like one syllable words. and it took him a lot of like convincing of Bernstein to give him at least like a couple of quarter notes. Like, please give me something. And he parodied it, which was one word, one bar, my word, your bar to convince Bernstein, please give me more rhythm.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
I always wonder about when you have like in a musical or in any related situation where you have one person writes the music and the other person writes the lyrics. I always wonder what that's like.
Mm-hmm.
I know that Sondheim, this is kind of the thing that put him on the map. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah, he's like 25
Yeah.
when this starts. He's very young.
It's really remarkable considering the span of time from the Broadway musical, right? Like, because that precedes the film.
Yeah, it's 57,
57,
right?
yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And that he was still around for part of the creative process. I know that they consulted him and obviously needed his blessing to get the remake done.
Yeah. I mean, well, if you're talking about people still being around from the original, I mean, it really is kind of a miracle that if you look at the 5 main characters from the original movie, 4 of those actors are still alive today.
Yeah, wow.
Yes, but the 5th had a very mysterious, unfortunate
Yes,
passing.
yeah, and
so.
we're not forgetting
been
about
alive.
that. But Rita Moreno, Russ Tamblyn, Richard Bamer, and George Chakiris are all still alive. I think they're all, maybe Richard Bamer's a little younger, but the rest are all in their 90s. And Rita Moreno in particular is still a very vocal public presence. It's really impressive.
Yeah, definitely.
We've mentioned a lot of details about this story already, but we'll make it especially clear now.
Yeah, it's helpful that these 2 movies have the same plot, so we only have to do this once this time.
Yeah.
There we go.
This is true. And for many lovers of film, theater, and music, it's just a classic story that at this point feels as old as time itself. In the Manhattan neighborhood, San Juan Hill, 2 rival street gangs, the Jets, who are all white, and the Sharks, who are all Puerto Rican, engage in a bitter rivalry over territory, which their leaders, Riff and Bernardo, respectively, hope to settle by way of a violent rumble. Complicating matters, though, are each leader's relationships with their more straight-laced friends and family. Riff with his best friend Tony, and Bernardo with his younger sister Maria and girlfriend Anita. Riff wants Tony's help in settling the gang rivalry. Bernardo wants Maria to marry his friend Chino, and Anita, while loyal to Bernardo and looking out for Maria, aims for more constructive ways to get by and achieve the American dream. But then, one night at a local dance, where the 2 gangs both show up with their compatriots, Maria and Tony spot each other from across the dance floor and instantly fall in love. The story that ensues is one of love against strong odds, personal struggles conditioned by greater societal forces, and the results that occur when big dreams and irrepressible violent urges spill over into reality.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Gee, sounds like Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, this sounds
Huh.
familiar.
Fun fact, I have never read or seen any version of Romeo and Juliet. I get the gist.
Really?
Oh, wow.
I get the gist, but no, the Shakespeare.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen both West Side Stories.
Well,
so.
yeah,
There
in
you
that
go.
sense, yes, but like,
check out Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet.
okay, yeah,
Mhm.
duly noted.
Mhm.
It's got great fights in it. It's a really gritty. I mean, it was done in what the
68 or so.
60s, yeah, the end of the 60s.
68.
It's a really good Romeo and Juliet, I think.
Yeah, I read Romeo and Juliet my freshman year of high school, and then we watched that film, and there is some nudity in this film. And there's this one kid who was kind of nodding off and falling asleep, and so he missed it. And so he jumped up and ran to the front of the classroom and tried to rewind the VHS tape. And our teacher got so mad that she turned it off, and we never finished
Oh,
it.
Oh no!
The fights are great. I mean, Michael York is in it, I think.
Oh, Michael York. That's cool.
I think he's in it.
Okay.
I have to look
Yeah,
at it.
yeah, he is.
Yeah.
I am checking right now, and yes, he is.
Really good movie.
Yeah, and Olivia Hussey just passed not even a month ago.
Right, I know.
Right.
She's the Juliet in that.
Yeah.
Very
So
cool.
it's,
Well, in past conversations, and a pretty recent one in this episode cycle, we've talked about how musicals on stage versus film are hopefully different experiences from one another. And I think both West Side Stories do really specific things to make the experience feel particularly cinematic and distinct from a stage production. But I felt like it was really clear that Spielberg's remake is really trying to open up the world in a much bigger way and put you on the streets and move people through space in a way the original and by extension the stage production really couldn't or can't. I can see valid arguments for preferring one over the other, but did you guys have any preference as to which one created the better ambiance for the story? And if so, why?
they're really different. I mean,
Yeah.
the first one created the ambience of I just it was a world I didn't know.
Yeah.
You know, and Spielberg's is a world that I recognized, and it was much more real in a way. From and it was much more gritty. And the costumes and everything else was much more gritty. The first one was a little slicker.
Interesting.
Yeah.
To me, but
Okay,
I was more. I almost was more wrapped up in the original, because the second one I went, oh well, that's different. Oh, that's different. Oh, that's different.
Interesting. Yeah.
So but some of it was in the second one was great.
I do feel like the 1961 version operates in many ways like a stage production. Like you feel these closed sets oftentimes, particularly with a lot of the dance numbers. I felt like in some ways it created like a hyper real, almost dreamlike scenario. And to me, there's something really cool about that. I think I was really taking that in, especially with the comparison point of the remake. I really see a lot of validity when it comes to telling a story that feels that way. I don't know how you guys feel.
Yeah, I mean, I see exactly what you mean about the original having more of this dreamlike quality to it. I mean, the word that came to my mind watching it is that it's very expressionistic. And that, I mean, the scene that comes to my mind as a point of comparison here is when Maria and Tony first see each other.
Absolutely. That was exactly what I was going to say.
Across the dance floor. And, in the 1961 film, they disappear into a dream, it seems, right there.
Yeah.
And that they're pulled out of, when they have their kiss and then Bernardo notices. But in the Spielberg remake, they go behind the bleachers. I think Spielberg, as, a filmmaker who is so well known for portraying certain fantastical situations, that one thing that I think defines his remake of West Side Story is that it feels a little bit more grounded, a little more real.
Yeah.
One of the things that he and Tony Kushner, who wrote the screenplay for the remake, were curious to do with the remake was to, because technology is better now than it was in 1961, to, take advantage of the more fluid camera movements that they could do. So I think that if I'm being asked if I prefer one over the other, often with that kind of question, I kind of can't choose one because you really are comparing different things. This is where the distinctions of the two films comes across quite clearly. And I think it's great in both of them.
Yeah. Emilio, to your question, just sort of about like the setting and the world and how it feels more open, I think, and expansive in the Spielberg remake. They get on the subway at one point. They like head uptown and they go to the cloisters. And I really, really love that is added. I think Spielberg films in that setting so incredibly well. He utilizes the stained glass really well.
Definitely.
And so you get some just really beautiful shots up there. But then even just like from the very beginning of the film, like in the prologue, as the jets they're kind of terrorizing this neighborhood.
Yeah.
But you learn a little bit about their motivations right off the bat. Like one of the jets tears down a restaurant sign and like underneath is a sign for the Irish pub that used to be there.
Yeah.
Right.
And like West Side Story has a difficult job because it's asking you to empathize with the Jets and the Sharks throughout the film. And that can be difficult with the Jets because it would be easy to just sort of brush them off as just like racist xenophobes. But I think that particular reveal kind of symbolizes like the erasure that they're feeling and shows us what they think they're fighting for. And that all happens like right off the bat. And so much of that is because they are like moving in, they're in the neighborhood more like tangibly.
The thing about the original one is it seems so much more claustrophobic.
Yeah.
Definitely.
You know, it's like everything. You know, America was done on a rooftop.
Yeah.
America is done on the streets there.
Yeah.
You know,
in the remake, yeah.
And it just seemed like, you know, they exploded more because of the claustrophobia. It just seemed different. There's no judgment on that. It just seemed that, as you were talking about, I was thinking how claustrophobic everything seemed.
Yeah, definitely.
Though in both films, I think it's interesting that like you get this scenery that is on the one hand very clearly New York, whether it be like the architecture that everyone is situated amidst, and also the, you know, you see the street signs, the specific streets that things are meant to take place on. This is true in both films. There are many scenes where, you know, it is meant to represent New York. It gives off the vibe, but you know it's not out on the street.
Right.
Like there's one specific tableau that repeatedly comes up in the original film where I think it's supposed to be somewhere on 10th Avenue, where you see Tony first singing Maria.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to believe that that's on the street, but it becomes clear after time that it's a set because they just keep using the same like little swath of that of that image. You don't see any more of the street around it.
Of course.
And you know, that's like, I have no issue with that. It's just how that movie was made. I think it's very expressionistic. It works very well, but it's just an interesting thing how you represent such an unmistakable city on film in spite of doing it fictitiously.
Emilio, how about you? How did you feel about like kind of the ambiance that's set in these two films?
I kind of flip-flopped a little bit. You know, when I first revisited the 1961 film, I enjoyed it a lot, but I think I saw some of the constraints. And at first I was like, it is a bit of a sign of the times. It is also a decision. I mean, it's a film that came out shortly after the Broadway and stage musical became such a phenomenon. And so in some ways I look at it and I say, absolutely, this film has to honor in some respects the source material. As the movie went on, I started to appreciate it more and more. And then when I saw the remake, I found myself appreciating the remake, but almost wanting to go back to the 1961 version. You know, the story of just falling in love that fast is something that like can only happen when you're a teenager and you're not too jaded. And so there's something almost dreamlike about the story. Yeah. And so while I appreciated and really respect how the remake really tries to expand on that, and there's some things that I really think it gets really good. It spoke to me that a lot of characters are doing things and it's just all black behind them, or you don't see walls. You don't, and there's something really cool. Julian used the word expressionistic. It's actually the thing that stayed with me, I think, the most. So I would say in this moment right now, I'm kind of digging the original's vibe.
Cool. And this is probably a good time. I don't think you've mentioned that this was your first time seeing the remake.
That's true. Yes. Yeah. I had not seen the remake until this week.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Yeah, but like, you know, we talked all before about like our relationships with the original movie, but I don't think we've talked much about how the remake came into our lives. I remember I saw that in the theater when it came out. I mean, Madeline, I remember you telling me that you did too.
Yes.
You know, at that point, it had been like almost 15 years since I had first seen West Side Story. You know, when you have some distance from the original, I kind of feel like there were some things I remembered hazily, but there were other like changes I noticed in the remake that hit me hard. Some of which have been mentioned already, like as Ron, you mentioned, like the direct acknowledgement of like the knocking down of buildings and the gentrification, the commentary on that in the new one, but also casting actors of the proper ethnicity in roles that were whitewashed before. And also, I mean, a detail that's come up a lot about the remake, but that's, you know, certainly I think worked effectively, was that there's a lot of spoken Spanish in it that is not subtitled. You know, the effect I got from that, which I think was intended on Tony Kushner and Steven Spielberg's part, was that, you know, it's trusting the viewer to like use your intuition if you don't understand it and try to figure it out. Which
and oftentimes, I mean, Emilio, you could speak to this more accurately because you speak Spanish, but oftentimes they translate themselves almost immediately after they speak in Spanish.
It took me like an hour and a half to realize that was happening. Partially because I am a fluent Spanish speaker, but there was a stretch where I was like, oh yeah, there aren't any subtitles here. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Well, you know, in the production that I worked on in 2009, when they were in Washington, D.C., before I got involved with it, they had super titles because there was so much in Spanish.
Oh, cool.
And then people couldn't...
like an opera.
They took it, yeah. And they just took it down because people were getting too confused. And as the show went on, they lessened the Spanish because Lin-Manuel Miranda did the translation for it.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so that was a consideration, and they were kind of tweaking it as the show was being put on.
And people were like,
Yeah.
Because, you know, a lot of people were purists and wanted to see it. But,
right.
But there was a lot of Spanish in it in the very beginning.
Sure.
Interesting. Yeah, I came to this remake, as Julian said, I saw it in the theaters. I was really hyped for this. I'm a big fan of, this is going to sound completely unrelated. I'm a big fan of this comedy show that originated at the UCB theater and then kind of went to the streaming world during COVID, called the George Lucas Talk Show, which George Lucas himself does not host. It's like a comedian who plays George Lucas as a talk show host. And what a guest they had during COVID lockdown when they were doing this streaming was Rachel Zegler, who plays Maria in the 2021 version. So she comes onto the show and does the show streaming with them for like several hours. And she's like really beloved and continues to come back in future episodes. And the joke was that like she did this way before West Side Story came out. She didn't have any theater credits. She didn't have any movie credits. And the joke was that like the George Lucas Talk Show would be her like first IMDb credit, and then her second would be like Steven Spielberg's West Side Story. So I was really hyped for this because I felt like I'd kind of come to know Rachel Zegler from this comedy show that she kind of like guested on.
So you were like the person that saw the indie band play to like 20 people, and you were like, these guys are really good. And then when they actually take off, you're like, I was an early fan.
I like to say that. I do think like the actual people involved in the George Lucas Talk Show feel very proud of that. Like when she was at the Oscars for the year that West Side Story is nominated for, they're doing a live Oscars watch while she's at the Oscars, and she like signs in on her phone from backstage at the Oscars to like join the George Lucas Talk Show. So like,
oh, fun.
Yeah. So she seems great. She seems so lovely. And I think she's great in this. I love her in this, which I'm sure we'll get into, but
yeah, she's a phenomenal Maria. Ron, we haven't asked you yet. How did you come to the remake?
I went to see it early on because, you know, I knew so many people involved in it, really. So I enjoyed it. I really did. You know, I enjoyed it more than I thought. And there's some things that, like Cool was very different.
Cool's very different.
It is.
And it's in a completely different place.
I wasn't really crazy about the way they did Cool. But anyway, that's me. But I did like I Feel Pretty in
the department store?
The department. So that was like, oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. There were certain things that I really liked in it, you know. But it was just something that I had to see because I had to see what they were going to do with it. you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, they tied the story about the gun.
Mm.
I like that, you know,
Yeah.
because before that, the gun just appears, and you know.
Right.
Yeah.
But you just accept it. But you know, but now the storyline was there. So.
Yeah.
I held off until this week to see the remake, partly because I had very fond memories of the original, and I'm like, why are you gonna remake an unimpeachable classic? You know, it's just, it feels like an impossible task. That being said, Steven Spielberg, kind of a good filmmaker. You know, he's pretty good. Tony Kushner, kind of a good writer. So I watched the movie in 2 parts. And yesterday we talked briefly, and I was like, oh my God, I am totally loving this. I got to say, the second act, I like have some quibbles. Yes, I would say post-America for me.
I mean, America is such a high point of this movie.
Right. But I have a couple of quibbles, and I don't know if it's just because I've seen the movies, you know, side by side. But I got to say, just in general, I was very impressed seeing this, and I feel like there's some really wonderful things that were added to this.
I agree, yeah.
Another experience I had in the movie theater is I'm watching this movie and I'm looking at Ariana DeBose, who plays Anita, and I'm like, where have I seen her? And it's driving me crazy through the whole movie. It's in the back of my head. I was like, I've seen this woman in something and I can't put my finger on it. And the film ends and I Google it and I have not seen her in anything. We went to the same college at the same time.
Wow.
And I don't really remember her. She studied musical theater. I studied music education. There's like some overlap. I think she would have been a year older than me. I don't know if she stayed like there the whole time or not, but there was definitely like, oh, I've seen this person in real life and I'm familiar with her as like the school was holding her up as like this great, you know, emerging artist. But I found that so funny that I was like, what have I seen her in? Oh, wait, no, I like almost know this person.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I remember watching the remake of West Side Story for the first time. And, you know, I think like all the performers in it were good. But even before I was thinking about who's getting considered for Oscars, I just remember, you know, thinking of like that actress who played Anita, like, wow.
She's pretty electrifying.
Yeah. And so on that note, you know, we are coming to discussing these 2 movies as part of an episode cycle that is united by people who have won Oscars for supporting performances. The character of Anita is one that has been honored twice to 2 different actresses with 2 different Oscars. Rita Moreno and Ariana DeBose both won Best Supporting Actress for their performances. But even within the narrative, Anita, I mean, I'm really interested in her as a character because like you watch like either version of the movie and you see that there are a lot of these characters who have like some kind of foil on either the Jets or the Sharks side. Like Riff and Bernardo are obviously meant to be foils to each other. And Anita's the only character who doesn't really arguably have a counterpart like that. She's a little more singular. My question is, why do we think Anita is such an enduring and revered character? Do we think she's the most likable person or the character with the most integrity? I'll put it to you all first. What do you think?
I think to start, both of those things.
Yeah.
She is likable and she has integrity. I mean, they're all supposed to be fairly young, but she seems quite mature. She seems like she has her head on straight. And the whole Romeo and Juliet romance is like, let's be frank, it's ridiculous. And they fall in love in like instantly. And this whole thing happens in like 2 days. Anita is the one that attempts to talk some sense into Maria by the end. And it's different than the way Bernardo is just like, you have to do what I say. Like Anita actually tries to get through to her. And then in addition to that, we get a pretty gruesome rape scene with her as the victim at the center. And you can't help but sympathize with her after that.
Yeah, and I think that in my memory of Anita as a character, I think she's the most relatable or sympathetic character in the story.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right. I think I was going to say she's the most relatable.
Yeah.
Because she's the one that, you know, is the conscience.
Yeah, she's the conscience. I always have kind of thought of her as kind of like the strongest character. And I mean, you know, she's not without her vulnerability, as we see particularly towards the end of both versions of the story. I think particularly in the earlier half of the story, we get the sense that she is this very vivacious, pretty headstrong character. And then as things start to head towards a more tragic end in the second half, I mean, we see that she's very affected by it. This tragedy directly affects Anita too, and she responds to it in very tangible ways. But it seems that still, even in spite of that, she is not giving up on looking out for herself. And I don't mean that in like a selfish way. You get the sense that she's going to persist. Like, she's not going to wallow in despair. Even before that gruesome rape scene occurs, that she shows up at Doc's convenience store because she wants to help.
Yeah.
And perhaps her attempts don't work, but I think, we can see that as a laudable move on her part. And I think that at the end of the story, even though we see the last of her within the narrative a little bit before Maria and Tony, I think that maybe we have the sense, and tell me if you guys agree, that of all the characters in this, she's the one who we probably think is most likely to be okay when this is all over.
I don't know.
I don't know, though.
She has to endure something pretty terrible. I mean, I feel like Anita and Bernardo seem like they've been together for a long time.
Yeah.
Not to mention like what the Jets do to her. I don't know. I mean, she does seem like she will persevere somehow, but to say like she'll be okay, I see what you're saying. I know you mean that optimistically. But I feel like she's got a rough road ahead to recover mentally from everything she's been through.
Yeah, not without her scars, of course.
I'll say, to answer your question about why I feel like she's enduring and revered, I think it's because her character seems to kind of go through the most realistic high to low journey. Like, obviously, you have Maria and Tony, their prefrontal cortexes clearly are not fully developed. I feel like she seems to have her head on straight in a way that most characters don't. And so when the way it's presented, the love of her life is killed, and then she also gets terrorized by the same guys, it's pretty brutal. So to me, it's like she's the conscience, as you said, Ron, I think. But I think she's also this character that you're meant to imprint a lot of pain on as well, that there's this other type of thing that's happening apart from just the head up in the clouds kind of thing that's happening between Tony and Maria. That there's a real loss here going on. I wanted to mention one other thing really quick, just if you guys don't mind, and maybe this will take us in another direction, but I feel like the remake upscaled her in a really incredible way. So obviously Ariana DeBose, I think, is just incredibly magnetic in this. I felt in the remake, like she and Bernardo, I could just feel the chemistry between the actors and the characters. It was like they couldn't take their hands off each other. I don't know. There was like something about that was like awesome. And it's not like I want my movies to be like full of, sexual tension and energy, but like I actually felt like knowing what was going to happen later in the film, I was like, that is one way that you set up something really terrible later. I thought the two of them, David Alvarez, who played Bernardo, I thought he was great as well. But she's the presence throughout the movie who's like, we need to be speaking in English. And that spoke to me in a big way. I mean, my grandparents, when they first moved to the United States, that was something that they did until they had kids. They were like, if we're going to make friends and have success here, our English has to be better. And so they just would only spoke English, and they forced it between one another. And seeing that, I think, was really cool. And it also reminds you that she's the one who realizes that there's power in assimilating. Like, she's not giving up Spanish. She's just going like, if you do this other thing, we don't have to be idiots and be in a gang. I love that is brought home in this remake.
Yeah. Although, I mean, you mentioned all of these details about the character, but notably, when you consider the tragic arc of the story in that last scene with her, she renounces America. The exact line spoken in Spanish is, "Yo soy puertorriqueña."
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that goes back to the previous point.
Yeah.
Which is that her character has this incredible tragedy. Yes, obviously, Maria has lost Tony. Tony's dead. Riff is dead, too. What's Riff's girlfriend's name? Velma?
Graciela.
Graciela. Sorry. I don't know why I thought it was Velma. Graziella's probably crying somewhere off screen. But I think it's Anita's pain that I think is meant to be felt the most.
Yeah.
Like she was the one who was carrying that torch. She was like, I feel like there's a way to do this. And when it all falls apart, it's that painful. She has to respond with that kind of frustration.
And on set, I mean, when you consider the anatomy of that specific scene, that specific final scene with Anita in the remake, you have the original player of that role in, cinematically anyway, being spoken to by the member of the New Guard who is taking up the role. And, there is that detail of her renouncing America there. That's not in the original. That's an addition to the remake. And it just makes that turn of the character so much more stronger. But it's like, the remake is made with so much reverence for the original, but that is kind of a moment where right there in the scene, you can see what this movie is aiming to do differently, how it's aiming to kind of push forward from that legacy while still being literally in that moment in dialogue with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking a lot about Anita and how the 2021 film, it gives her an opportunity to be fleshed out a little bit more. We get these additional scenes with her. We get this extended dialogue. And I think Spielberg, he gives us these additional scenes with a lot of characters that develop them more deeply.
Yeah.
Well, Spielberg gave everybody a backstory.
Uh-huh.
Just read that the other day, that he gave everyone a backstory. Got on set and they had a backstory.
That's so interesting. Yeah, because some of this I feel like you get from lines in the film. Like I think even Bernardo has a scene. I don't remember the exact line, but he says something about like Maria being bossy or something, which I feel like is not anything that you would characterize Natalie Wood's Maria as like bossy or headstrong.
Right, yeah.
So I guess like my question for you guys is, what traits do we think are different between the same characters in the same and two different films, not just with Maria, but with all the main characters?
I think it's just a sensibility of time.
Yeah.
It was a different era then. I mean, and people reacted different ways. And now people are much more vocal about what they want.
Yes, very
and
true.
and at that time, it was okay for women to stay home and have kids. That's what
a lot of people did.
Now it's not that way. Now it's more independent. So I think it was much more. Everyone was much more independent.
Yeah, so if Anita is saying like, I am not moving back to Puerto Rico and like raising your 6 kids, then in 2021 we're like, yeah, you tell them. But like maybe in 61 that wouldn't have gone over as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, making this story, like portraying the story in 1961, it's more of that time, but showing it in 2021, it's a period piece.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's interesting to consider that because like, even though it's portraying what is, supposed to be a past time, you can't help but inflect it with the modernity that it exists in.
Yeah.
It's cool that there can be that dialogue between those two things because it's not exactly either reality. I was curious, Madeline, I mean, you pointed out Maria being more headstrong in the remake. Are there any like particular moments that really stand out as indicative of that to you?
I think that you kind of see it in most of her scenes. Like if you think about the dance, like Chino like kind of goes out on the dance floor and has his like little moment, which is very cute. And you can see her kind of like light up like briefly, like, oh, maybe this guy isn't like as square as I thought he was. She like goes out and dances a little bit. And I think that if she wanted to like just continue to make her family happy and just go with the flow, then it would be very easy for her to let herself like kind of give herself away to this moment. Like this is enough for me to accept this guy here. I feel like the original Maria didn't really have a moment like that with Chino at any point. Like he never really gave her an in. So it was easier for her to stray. Whereas with this one, I feel like she kind of had an in there where she could have just said like, okay, I'm okay with this guy. He seems nice enough. And he's like got a little spice now. But that's sort of a moment. That's the moment where she starts to stray away. And then we get the moment with Tony. So that's maybe not the perfect example, but like, that's just one. And I think like on the balcony scene, when Tony finds her she's much more like, get out of here. Like it's
yeah.
whereas I feel like Natalie Wood's Maria is just like, oh, you found me. Like she seems like, oh no, don't come up. Whereas Zegler's Maria is like, no, like they're gonna see you.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think that's a better one.
I'll mention one, and maybe headstrong is not the word to characterize it, but she's got a little bit more of an independent streak. Is she plants a kiss on Tony herself.
That is true.
Yeah, that movie, I remember it's like, oh, that's a choice.
Yeah.
You know? That's something that you don't see in the original, I think, until, I mean, they really set it up. You know, they really...
Yeah, I mean, I think these are all like great examples of Maria being a more, I guess, outspoken, autonomous character in the remake. I mean, a detail that I think it's true in both versions of the story, but definitely emphasized more in the remake, is that in the pair of Maria and Tony, that Tony is kind of the, for lack of a better term, the hopeless romantic. Not that Maria is completely devoid of that quality, because she definitely has some of that too, but she's a little more of a realist than Tony is. That, you know, she has these moments when you can see some hesitation from her.
Yeah.
I think she understands the reality better than he does because of her experience. Like, she is an immigrant and she has seen like what they're up against. And he's been through a lot as well, but differently. I don't know that he's fully comprehending what it means to be in an interracial relationships, particularly two feuding gangs. Like, I don't know that he's really thinking about this. He thinks like love conquers all.
He's also been in jail for a year.
Yeah, which is an interesting addition. Yeah. I actually wanted to get to that. That's an interesting, I think, distinction in the later film. I don't know, Ron, if you know on stage, like if they give him any sort of backstory like that, because I don't recall it.
No, they're just high school kids.
Yeah.
Right. But watching the remake again this time, I mean, like that addition struck me the first time, but on rewatch, I noticed a little more of how Tony actively tries to counteract his past. Like, I think he has made, you know, there's a darker element of his past in this remake, but I think in response, he is more of a peacemaker too. Or an attempt
until he's not,
but he attempts to be a peacemaker.
Yeah.
And like, you know, you see that, like, I think of the Rumble in particular, because he is up front in that in a way that he's not in the original movie. He's like right there basically when it's starting, and he's trying to reason with Bernardo to try and stop the whole thing. Whereas he's a little bit more, you know, arriving as it's happening in the original, and does not try as actively to stop the whole thing from occurring.
Yeah. In rewatching the 1961 version, Russ Tamblyn, man, what a dynamo. That guy is electric. It's something that I actually really liked about the Riff character in the original, is he seemed like a charismatic leader in a way that I think in the remake, Mike Feist's version of Riff is a little more the angry young man kind of archetype. And I like some of the aspects of that he's a little bit more like jaded, and that his and Tony's relationship seems not as like rosy. I like both depictions for different reasons, but to me, the Russ Tamblyn version of Riff, he seemed more like the charismatic leader that everyone could get around.
Yeah.
And I felt like the Mike Feist version of Riff he was not as compelling to me as the guy who's like, I'm standing up and I'm speaking for everybody.
I totally see what you're saying. And I think it's because of this distinction that I really like the Mike Feist take on this. I like both. I think Russ Tamblyn's great in this. He jumps so high. I mean, he's a gymnast. If you guys have seen Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, like he's so good in that.
Yeah.
And he's really good in this, and he's a great dancer, and he's a great gymnast. And I do think he's very charismatic. I think it's like the characterization of the Jets in general is very different. And in the original, they still feel very boyish. Like Ron, you said, they're like high school kids. In the 2021, we don't really know exactly how old they are, but we know that Maria is 18. She says so.
That's why, you know, for me with Tony going
to prison,
it just seems like he's robbing the cradle. I know, it just seems a little...
Which we don't need to talk about
Yeah.
Never mind. I'm not going to go there. But yeah, I mean, Tony is probably in his early 20s.
Right.
Because Maria's only 18. So these guys are seemingly a little older. And as Ron said up top, a little grittier. And so I don't think, like, maybe they had a young, charismatic Riff several years ago, but he's literally seen his best friend, like, nearly beat someone to death.
Yeah.
And I think that if he's still, after witnessing that, is still acting like Russ Tamblin's Riff, then, like, the guy needs to come down to earth. Like, I think Vice Riff has, like, seen some shit, and I think, like, he's maybe the leader that they feel like they need at this point because they've been through a lot.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, and the tones of the film, I think, reflect that.
Yeah.
I completely see your point. And in some ways, I like it, but just on a gut level, there was something about the Russ Tamblyn version that for me was like, I see why this guy is so magnetic and compelling to all these other young guys who are like, you know,
he could be a cult leader.
Yeah,
he kind of is.
One thing that the original does have over the remake is that some of these main actors are very clearly doing their own stunts.
Mm-hmm.
Russ Tamblyn being one of them. There's like some flips that he does that, you know, clearly, you know, not just anyone can do that. And similarly, there's actually when Tony exits the scene of the Rumble in the first one, you see that Richard Bamer is like jumping on top of that fence all by himself. Yeah. And it's a pretty incredible feat.
Well, talking a little bit about the physicality that we see in some of the characters, Ron, you literally trade in that physicality. And I'm wondering if there's anything that you can share about what you look for or what is part of your process when you are directing a fight like the Rumble for the stage. And then wondering if maybe you saw any of that type of energy also in these films.
Well, the film, a lot of times they'll have like, stunt people do a lot of the stuff, the bigger stuff, But there's not much difference. In film, the fighting is, you don't have to make sounds. On stage, you have to make the sounds and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Although in West Side Story, you don't have to because there's music in it, so you don't have to do it. But in the film, it's a lot closer and tighter and faster. On stage, it's a little slower, so you can bring the audience along with the story. Mm-hmm. And what I look for, I mean, a lot of times it's whoever they give me, I got to work with. And some people can do some things, and some people you got to, like when I did West Side Story, I would bring in a boxing mitt because a lot of these people couldn't punch really well, So I'd bring a mitt and I said, punch it. No, go. And so, finally they'd never been in, not that I was in a lot of fights, but I kind of knew how to punch.
Right.
A lot of people don't know how to do that. So I would like to train that, and if there were certain things that they couldn't do, I would I'd adjust it, and then I would add more. And I said, now when this happens, then that happens. Mm-hmm. So I would choreograph it that way, and just get kicks and punches, and because they didn't have really any weapons except for that knife. So
consequential weapon there, yeah.
So in the film, they had one guy's carrying some kind of tube, and they're carrying a baseball bat.
Like the chains on their hands,
right, and all that stuff. But I didn't see them using it in the film.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
Maybe in the 2021.
Yeah, I feel like after Bernardo gets fatally stabbed, then things get a little crazy. But
but I don't remember using any weapon. I don't remember.
It's so fast.
It is fast. Yeah.
So that's the thing is there's all these fast cuts
for
film, which is what they do on stage. You can't cut away. Every fight has a story that you have to tell. And when I did it in Tokyo, they had a pool. They had like water, so I got to throw somebody in water and
cool.
get them get kicked in the head and stuff like that. So that's a lot of fun.
Wow!
And they had it was in a junkyard, so we had all these levels and things like that we can work with. A lot of it is just on the spot. A lot of it just comes to me.
You said something about that it tells a story. From your perspective, is it important for the fight to be a standalone thing, or that the story that came before can also add a particular amount of context? Like how do you weigh that?
Well, no, the fight has to continue the story. A lot of times people like to over choreograph fights. You get it. There's not a fight doesn't, in real life, it doesn't take long.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, boom, 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 ow, and then you're done, you bleeding, whatever. If on stage, it's a little long, but it has to move the action forward. It's like in a musical, the song has to move the action forward.
Right.
It can't be too long. It can't be too short either. I mean, I remember I saw a show on Broadway, and the fight was so long that they can't maintain it. It just doesn't make sense.
Right.
And you work with the director, you work with the choreographer. What is the story they want? And I'm more of a servant to that.
Got it.
So I've done shows where they don't know what they want. They don't know the story. So I can't really do a fight if I don't know what the story is.
Right.
But with West Side Story, it's more like I come up with stuff. That's all.
Fun.
I see where they want them to be placed. And so I'll do the action there.
Cool.
Well, thank you, Ron, for all of your accounts of fight choreography. Yeah, when we've talked a lot about what is in the original film and what the remake updates about it. And I feel like the portion of the remake that I think is the most different from the original film and where you can see a lot of its updates the most clearly is in its middle, its second act. And so you mean we have some of the musical numbers appear, many of them actually in a different place in the sequence. America comes a little later in the remake. G, Officer Krupke, it's kind of in the same place in the runtime, but it's still surrounded by different things, and it occurs a little differently. But then One Hand, One Heart, and then Cool appear noticeably earlier than in the original film. And all of these musical numbers occur in different locations. And then not long after that, I mean, it occurs before the Rumble in the original film. After in the remake, we have I Feel Pretty, which is in a more similar location to where it originally takes place, but still considerably different spot in the narrative. Whether it's that or the middle act specifically, what do we make of this middle of the movie really being the prime section for updates to the story? And do we see any connections between any of these particular songs and scenes?
After I pose a question similar to yours, Julian, because some of these things jumped out to me as well. I didn't know that the 1961 version also took some liberties in terms of where these particular numbers were placed in the larger story. Listening to Steven Spielberg speak about why he was so interested in making the remake was that the original Broadway recording in 1957 was like a core musical text for him, and that the order of the music on that 33 1/3 record was something that he really wanted to preserve more. And so the stage production is actually closer to the 2021 remake than the 1961 version is. I think.
I have them all up right now because I'm trying to compare like the two movies and then the stage. So continue, but if anyone has a question.
I know they changed the order in but the original I don't know about the original, how much they changed.
That is interesting though to consider. I didn't really think of that being a possible dimension for Spielberg. I do know this was a formative movie for him, which contributed, or the original was, which contributed to him wanting to remake it.
The thing that jumps out to me is the placement of G Officer Krupke, which Ron, maybe you can speak to. It seems like it's on stage, it's towards the end, right?
Oh, interesting.
Whereas in, I think both movies, it's in the first act.
I would call it the middle, but it's...
I mean, well, you say the middle, but you also said 3 acts. I'm thinking of this as like on stage 2 acts. It's Fair like point, it's before the Rumble.
Also before the intermission in the 1961 version. Yeah.
Good point.
It's interesting, because that song to me in the film feels so playful.
Yeah.
Whereas I guess if it happens later in the stage production, I don't know, there's got to be something more somber about it. I don't know. I'm trying to think about how that would have changed things.
What does it say in the play it comes?
Act 2, I Feel Pretty, Somewhere, Procession and Nightmare, which is like not a song, I don't think. Then G Officer Krupke, and then A Boy Like That. So it's like right before A Boy Like That. But it's after I Feel Pretty and Somewhere, according to Wikipedia.
Yeah.
That's what I auditioned with, that scene.
I imagine so.
Yeah, I mean, G Officer Krupke is kind of like, that song to me is a really interesting window to like the conditions that create the situations that all the characters are in. I mean, it's the Jets who are singing it, but, kind of everyone involved. But then looking at, I mean, now maybe my perception is flipped. It's, thrown for a loop by the fact that maybe Spielberg was trying to be more reverent to the original song order. But I still feel like the middle act of the remake, I mean, we talked a little bit about how America is different. That, Ron, you mentioned that it's in an enclosed setting on a rooftop in the original film. It's out more wide open on the streets in the remake. And I think, the meaning of that is pretty apparent. That it is just meant to be like, Anita's sense of opportunity is more palpable.
Yeah.
But then when we look at some of these other numbers that come a little bit out of the original film sequence, I mean, we've mentioned it briefly, but we haven't talked much yet about Cool.
Yeah, that's the next one I was going to bring up, because that's the other one that I'm looking at that on stage, I think, like with the 2021 remake, it's in kind of the first half. It's pre-Rumble.
Yeah, pre-Rumble. Yeah.
Whereas in the 1961 film, it's later. And apparently on stage, on stage, it's Riff that sings this. Ron, does that sound right to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas in 1961, it is a jet named Ice.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2021, it is Tony.
Yeah, and Tony being the one to sing it in the remake is part of what contributed to my view of him being more of a peacemaker in this version, telling them, cool down. You don't do this rumble.
Ron, I want to know your thoughts, Ron, because you briefly started before saying you didn't really like how they did.
I liked the cool on stage in the original number as opposed to the one that was in the new one. And that's just personal choice, but I liked the other one because there was more fun to it. There was more of a sense of humor to it. And then this one was like, I don't know, it seemed darker.
It's definitely darker. It's definitely more tense.
Also, it was under like a bridge or something like that.
Yeah.
In the movie, it was at like a auto shop or something.
Yeah, something like that.
It's more
it seemed to be underground.
Yeah.
I mean, overall, I really like the 2021 film. I do think Ansel Elgort is like the weakest link performance-wise for me.
I want to talk about that eventually.
And I think that's part of why I kind of agree with you on Cool, is I just don't find him as captivating as if Riff sang it. Or even if they picked whoever Ice was. That maybe what I think that's his worst song is Cool. Like I think he kind of sells the rest of them and maybe not Cool.
Yeah.
Listen, this was great. I'd like to stay longer, but
that's okay.
No, you're totally fine. Where can people find you, Ron?
Well, my website, I guess.
Yes.
Which is ronpiretti.net.
Or .com, either one.
Yeah, I typed in .com and then it took me to .net, so you can use either.
Oh, then maybe that's what happens now.
You can use both.
So
cool.
Yeah, there, and I teach at the Barrow Group, and they can always look me up there.
Wonderful. Well, Ron, we just want to say thank you so much for joining us. We really
it was my pleasure. This was fun. I had a good time.
Awesome.
It's nice to revisit, like, probably the happiest 17 weeks of my life was in West Side Story.
That's so cool.
Because I was only Officer Krupke for 17 weeks, but because I was a replacement. But it was like, really fun.
That's just so cool.
Yeah. Thank you again for coming on and joining us, and thank you for your patience with everything earlier, man. I really appreciate
pleasure.
that.
No problem.
We'll see you around, Ron.
I'm glad that you brought up Ansel Elgort. So you said that he's the weak link of the film.
That is my opinion, yes.
Okay, cool. Julian, how do you feel about Ansel Elgort?
I felt honestly a little indifferent about him. I don't think I do sort of see where you're coming from, Madeline, about him being the weaker link. He was, at the time that this movie came out, there had been some controversy around him.
Yeah.
I think it was a little hard to critique his performance with a totally objective mind while watching it. I think he's fine in the movie. I think that he works at a lot of points, but I wouldn't say that I was blown away by him. I do think that I was more strongly impacted by like Rachel Zegler, Ariana DeBose. And I think that, David Gonzalez and Mike Feist, I think were they have a little less screen time than some of these other characters, but I found them quite impactful too.
I'm certainly not saying that Ansel Elgort is bad in this. I think that the bar is so high from everyone else.
Good way to put it, yeah.
That I think maybe he doesn't quite, for me, reach the bar that the rest of them have set. I think most of his songs are very good. And I think this is the one that I'm like, it takes me out for a second.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I had heard just rumblings that he was not good in this movie before I came to the movie this week.
So you went in with a low expectation.
I came in with very low expectations. And I thought he was fine.
I think he's fine.
Maybe even a little better than fine.
Yeah, fine
in the
to good.
1961 version, he is portrayed, I think, as such a wide-eyed dreamer. It works. It works, like I said, for the very almost sort of heightened reality. So for me, it kind of worked. He more than held his own.
Yeah, I think I don't stand by weak Link. I think he's like the least strong Link, in my opinion. I still think he's good in this. How do you guys feel about his choices of the reaction when he finds out that Maria's been killed? Because I can't decide how I feel about that.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
You know what face I'm talking about.
I know the face you're talking about. He like runs to the wall and then kind of like turns.
And he does this like turn like wide-eyed that I can't duplicate. And I'm actually not saying that I don't like it. I'm saying that I can't decide if I like it.
Right. I know what you mean. Yeah. And that is a moment that I think is done really well in the original.
Yeah.
One of the things too that we were talking a little bit about a bit earlier kind of hit me watching the original. The sadness in Doc's character was really effective.
Yeah.
Not to diminish what Rita Moreno's version of that is, kind of going for a little bit of a different thing.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah.
But the sadness for me, it kind of hit me hard. Also, this goes back to a greater thing we're talking about. That moment in the 61 version is real tight. Claustrophobic, the word that Ron was using.
Yeah.
And the Spielberg remake, he kind of like runs off to another part of the room. The whole room is much bigger. The whole thing is just not as contained. Yeah. And so maybe he's like trying to fill the space a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, but, in the words of Christopher Walken, really explore the studio space.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe you had Spielberg behind the camera telling him something similar.
Right. They did work together on Catch Me If You Can. So,
yeah. So that Spielberg got that note from Walken right there.
There we go. Yeah.
But going back, like one thing that I prefer a little bit about the Spielberg remake is I think it's a little better paced than the original film. I think this is like the kind of criticism where the original film does not lose points in my book because of this.
Sure.
But just as the experience of watching it, I think there are a lot of sequences in the original that go on very long in time span to scenes that are meant to be similarly important. It feels like the act breaks are a little, at least in my opinion, a little less clear in the original. And I think that they're very salient in the remake. I mean, say what you will about Ansel Elgort's acting in the moment, but I actually like what they did with Cool in the remake. I thought it was better placed in that version than in the original film.
I agree.
Yeah.
In large part because, and I'm just going back to this, man. I got some love for Russ Tamlin's riff.
Yeah.
And to me, there's this gigantic vacuum that happens. He's such a strong presence that when he's gone, I'm like, who is Ice? Like, who is this guy? Yeah.
Who is Ice? Yeah. I mean, I even feel similarly about Richard Bamer's Tony at points. Like, I kind of feel like throughout the entire film, if Riff's not there, I'm like,
right. I know.
Whereas I do think like Elgort and particularly Zegler and others are so captivating that you don't really feel that as much.
Absolutely. And with the way that Cool is done in the original film, I think that I like that musical number in the moment, and I think that the actor playing Ice does a good job there. But I feel like the meaning of that scene, of that musical number, is not really given space to last in the original, because it's kind of like, the message there is a little less like, let's all try to avoid this conflict, and more like, don't reveal anything to the police, or
Right.
it's almost like in Goodfellas when Jimmy Conway is trying to tell everyone like, don't show off what you bought from the Lufthansa heist.
Right.
It's more like that kind of message.
Low profile, guys.
Yeah. And so like you could interpret it to mean that he's trying to get everyone to just be cool more generally, and especially with that pretty kind interaction that he has with anybody's who we should talk about after that's all over. But then that happens right before the gang rape scene, and it's just kind of like, well, what was all that for then?
Yeah, we talked a little earlier about how it's difficult in this film. You have to empathize with the Jets and the Sharks, and then with what the Jets do to Anita. Really, I mean, it really turns me on them. I do like, you talked about anybody's. I like how in both films they do separate anybody's. Like anybody's, I don't know that the Jets fully claim them, but if we're considering anybody's to be a Jet, they are certainly the most sympathetic Jet in general, but specifically even more so because they are not involved in attempting to rape Anita.
Yes. And in the remake, I mean, notably, even though anybody's is still at most a secondary character in the remake, the really forward thinking casting choices made of casting anybody's with a non-binary actor and portraying the character as trans in the film itself. And
whereas the original feels a little bit more like a tomboy.
Exactly.
Which I love the original Anybody's, and my mom was like, Anybody's was always my favorite. Like, I think that's a great character in the original as well, but they're definitely portrayed as more of a tomboy. Whereas, in the new one, they seem to be portrayed as trans or at least non-binary.
Right. And they don't specifically say either of those words in the movie. But I mean, the clear confirmation you get of that is in this sort of resituated staging of G Officer Krupke that happens inside a police station. Anybody's gets into a confrontation with another Jet who is insulting their supposed gender status, and anybody's directly says, "I ain't no girl."
I do feel like the original Anybody says that at some point as well.
Yeah, I would have to go back and
I can't
check.
remember where.
But I think that it's...
I think in the original, it feels like I'm not a stereotypical girl.
Exactly.
Like I don't subscribe to your gender norms.
Right.
Whereas the new one feels like I am definitionally not a woman.
Right.
To go back to something you said, Julian, about foils, in the 2021 version, Chino becomes a little bit more like the foil of Anybody's. Yeah. In some respects, where Chino seems like he wants in with the Sharks more.
Yeah, he's developed more in the remake just generally. That he's kind of like, the wannabe shark, and then he just goes a little too far.
And Anybody's and Chino are kind of paired in a way, in the sense of like, Anybody's, the job that they kind of claim is like, I'm going to go keep an eye on Chino. Like, I'm going to go find Chino.
Right.
That's a great point. Like, it's interesting with Chino as a character because Chino is this, even when he's more developed in the second film, still like a secondary character who has a very consequential role in the final scene. But I interestingly, I thought even though Chino is less developed in the first film, I was a little more into the actor who played him in the first film, his performance.
Me too.
Yeah, because I think it was more emotionally expressive. Not to take any credit away from the actor from the remake, who still does a great job, but I do think that the Chino you see in the remake seems a little bit more like a little bit more emotionally removed from what's going on, and not completely disconnected. I mean, he obviously is still the one to break the news about Bernardo's death to Maria, and has a very, I think honestly that's the best moment of that actor's performance in the remake. I just feel like you don't get that much emotional expression from him in other scenes.
That's like wild how much I disagree with you guys on this.
Really?
I think he is so good. So this is Josh Andres Rivera, which, fun fact, he and Rachel Zegler are a couple. They meet on this film.
Oh,
and
fun.
I
Cool.
believe they're still together, as far as I know. She posts about him a lot. And I think that Chino's is characterized very differently in these two films.
They definitely are.
And I don't know that it's entirely a choice by actors. Like, I think a lot of it is the choice of the direction of the film. You were saying that the newer Chino is like kind of emotionally removed, but I think the original Chino is like physically removed. Like, they are really trying to keep him separate, which they try to do in the new one, but to no avail. Like he still makes his way inwards. Whereas there's like a naivete and like an innocence, I think, to the original Chino, which you start with in the remake Chino. You see the gears turning a little bit more with the newer Chino. Like you see him formulating a plan, I think.
Okay,
You see him, like he and Tony get into the Rumble together. Like they have that moment where they help each other. And
Right.
And I think that's very affecting.
It's true.
And he's really interesting to watch in the Rumble and immediately thereafter. And him going to the like boxing ring or wherever like all the other sharks are hiding out and just like saying like basically you guys aren't going to do anything. Like I'm going to do this myself.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
I liked him.
I see what you mean though, Julian. I actually kind of like that in the original he is not that developed. There's something that is more shocking about the act of him killing Tony and him taking that on that kind of works for me from a narrative perspective a little more.
I see that.
I think I see both sides of this point. I think that Chino, at the very least, is better written in the remake. And however you feel about the actor's performance, yeah, I see both sides of this.
We're talking about Chino. Obviously, his actions, they take us straight through the end. And so I just had a quick question for you guys. Like watching the remake for the first time, as you're going through, do you feel like there was any part of you where you were questioning, like, are they gonna do it? Like, are they actually gonna kill him? Are they gonna actually take all the same actions? Is the ending going to be the same? Like, were you questioning that at any point in this film?
So I was so on board with a lot of the things that the remake was doing to kind of upgrade the story that I was like, there's got to be something different for an ending.
Yeah.
Like something has to be a little different. And the ending is note for note. The same.
Even the way they like carry away Tony's body is
exactly
the same.
kind of funeral procession style. And I talked a lot earlier about how Anita's character and Bernardo, like I am just feeling how bad these guys want to get it on, like the whole movie. And to me, there's like something about that there's gonna be a huge payoff on this. And I don't think it's in Ariana DeBose's performance because scene by scene, she's kind of the most compelling thing when she's on screen. I just think the way that the movie handled her grief and mourning, it was like a B-. I was like, I wanted the A+. All the setup was there, and it didn't pull me in that direction where I'm like, yo, I am seeing how absolutely crushed this character is.
Yeah, I think the closest you get is like her in the morgue, right?
Yeah.
Which is a new scene. It's
I wanted the close up. Like she was doing it. She was doing the whole movie.
Honestly, I kind of disagree with that because I think, maybe you don't get a literal close up, but honestly, something I really loved about Ariana DeBose's performance towards the end is that in the wake of mourning Bernardo, and when she finally gets to speak to Maria, and I'm forgetting the name of that song that goes along with that.
A Boy Like That.
A Boy Like That. That she's like, you can see that she's holding back tears the whole time. And I think, that like on a technical and emotional level, that's such an impressive thing to do while singing that song. So I think that honestly, like Ariana DeBose just, held it down as that was going on. And I feel like narratively it worked just fine for me.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about that song myself. And at first, rewatching this yesterday, I kind of thought what you thought, Emilio, in that song in particular, that like, oh, interesting how they don't really have her like breaking down yet.
Yeah.
I do think that in that particular song, she's like kind of doing what you're saying, Julian. She's like trying to hold her composure.
Well, she's supposed to in that song.
And I think that by the end of it, she manages to break down a little, but then I think it so quickly goes into like their interrogation that maybe there could have been a little more time there before the lieutenant comes in.
Yeah,
maybe.
All I'll say is like if there was a scene or if there was a moment or if you had 10 more seconds on something, I'm like, this girl's going to give it to you.
Yeah.
My fault is not at all with her performance.
She is
to me,
fantastic.
yeah.
Yeah.
To me, it's like that's more from like a narrative
Yeah.
direction
It's like
choice.
they're trying to pivot back to Tony and Maria's story.
Right.
And-
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to get past a little too quickly, maybe,
Right.
Anita's story. And maybe, like you said, just like 10 seconds of her just like totally letting all the walls down and letting it all flood out would have gone a long way. Because I know that Ariana DeBose would have sold that
Totally.
1000%.
Because the setup is there. The emotional setup is there. And so
Totally.
that would be my answer to your question, Madeline. Is
Yeah.
like the rest of this movie is so cool, really nuanced. The differences are really welcome and great. And the ending, I wanted to see what would happen if they went all the way.
Yeah.
Even a wrinkle or two.
No, I get that.
Like Tony can be dead.
Yeah,
that's
you're like,
okay.
it's fine. Tony doesn't need to live.
Yeah.
Julian, how do you feel? Was there any point where you thought maybe they would change something in the ending as you were watching this the first time?
Honestly, no. I did not think that was going to happen. I think that, with this, such canonical source material that they're working with, I thought, like, honestly, I think doing that might have felt like kind of a cheap move.
I mean,
Like-
I think if it was just like they live and fall happily in love forever, then that
Yeah.
would be a cheap move.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think that they're like part of what the remake handles really nicely is that it knows what to change and what not to. I think that, not just for narrative integrity, but for what works in the story to, bridge the gap between the period that it's set in and the modernity that the film is released in. And that's, that's part of why I singled out the middle act for a question, is because I think that I think there maybe is the most wiggle room there for that to happen. And I think they use it really well. I mean, I think that another recent movie that I would praise similarly is Dune Part 2, because that's a film that if you've read the book, it knows what to keep and what to adapt. And I feel like it strikes a good balance. And I think that this version of West Side Story is doing the same thing. And I honestly think that in this day and age, even if Tony Kushner or Steven Spielberg were considering doing a different ending, they were probably very wary of how purists would react. Especially, it's not like West Side Story fans are the same as Star Wars fans or something, but I think there's enough people who respect this story and all the different versions that have happened of it that if, they had changed the ending, it would have felt blasphemous to many. And, I'm not just saying that they were purely capitulating to fan expectations. I think it just...
He wants to honor the original intent.
Honor the original intent, I think it's still a logical conclusion for the characters with everything that happens. And I think like part of why this movie really works as a remake is because it, even in spite of the very apparent progress that it shows in many of its aspects, it still reminds us that we are living in a very polarized, broken time.
Yeah.
And that, so some of these details, like especially the tragedy of the ending, I think, remind us viewers that we've come very far and we've still got so far to go.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that's ultimately how it works for me.
I'm just looking for a wrinkle, and I'm not Tony Kushner. I don't know what it is. A wrinkle or two, I would have really welcomed. And that's okay.
I mean,
I'll leave it there.
Madeline, you posed the question. Do you have any thoughts you want to share on that?
I just felt like I was curious. And I think part of it was that it had been so long since I'd seen the original, that I didn't have details of exactly, like I didn't have specific memories of exactly how the ending played out. Obviously, I'm like, I know Romeo and Juliet, like I know they both die or whatever, but in this, they don't both die.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they don't.
Just one of them dies. So I think I just couldn't really remember exactly how it played out. And so it was going to kind of be a surprise for me either way. I was like, obviously somebody dies. I don't fully remember who it's going to be.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Just two things I want to shout out. So one, we talked a little bit about how this is kind of a fictional presentation of New York City, but one little bit of accuracy that I have to praise the remake for is that the at some point when the Rumble is being planned, that they all say they're going to go to 57th and the River, and you see them in the film at this sanitation department building where all of the salt is being kept for when the streets are snowy. And I don't know if that's in there, but I can confirm that there is indeed a Department of Sanitation facility at 57th and the River.
Oh, that's true.
If you've ever gone to a concert at Terminal 5, you've been right up next to it. But yeah, so one little bit of New York City accuracy that I have to praise it for.
I'm also pretty sure that building appears in the Spider-Man PS4 video game.
Oh, interesting.
I think.
Yeah, I would. That seems like something they would have there. And last little thing, it's going back to Anita. I tried to pay attention to the costuming of all characters, but I noticed that in the original film that every time you see Anita, she's wearing something purple. That is the consistent
the original, you said.
In the original,
okay,
yes.
Sorry.
That is the consistent look, at least in how Rita Moreno plays her. And I thought there was, even though the exact outfit changes, I thought there was a message of consistency there. That, we've talked about Anita as an enduring character and that in spite of all odds, she persists. So I sort of interpreted it that way. And I noticed that in the remake, obviously, there are more costume changes for Ariana DeBose. Very notably, she's in that yellow dress for America. But in the final scene with her, that she is wearing, it's a different shade of purple, but a purple blouse still. It's darker, and maybe that is there to be indicative of the ways that the remake is grittier and darker than the original. But I noticed that is maybe, I'm sure, an intentional homage to the costuming of Rita Moreno's portrayal.
Cool.
Like I said, I listened to Stephen Sondheim's brief commentary on this, and he does not particularly like the lyrics he wrote for I Feel Pretty. He thinks he said he wrote those lyrics to prove that he knew how to rhyme. Which I think is very funny. But on reflection, he's like, these lyrics feel very unnatural for Maria. It doesn't feel like the witty turn of phrase that Maria would come up with. I think that Zegler sells it more. It seems a little forced for Natalie Wood. So I see what he's saying.
I also think that in the movie, she's given more space to operate.
Yeah, she's just in the dress shop seems to be a single room or just a single shop, whereas they have all of Gimbals in the remake.
Right, exactly.
Since you mentioned that song, I noticed in the remake that, they don't really mess with the lyrics a lot to the songs, but they did scratch the word gay from that song in the remake. Yeah, because it's right there in the first line of the the original version. But yeah, I think they took it out there. You probably just so it doesn't get lost in translation.
Did they replace it with something?
I think that
might be where they say bright, or they might say bright elsewhere. I don't know.
I believe it was bright, or if not bright, some kind of synonym.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting.
I didn't even notice. Yeah, Dougie pointed it out to me.
Yeah. Well, I would assume that was a move on Tony Kushner's part. And honestly, he's one of those writers where I feel like I'd be a little more careful critiquing Tony Kushner's work as opposed to maybe some other writers, but that's just me.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Very quickly before we transition, can I just point out 3 little homages to the original film in the remake?
Go for it.
Just little visual details. So first thing, Maria's dress that she wears to the dance, pretty much identical to the first film. Also, the tricolor door to her bedroom.
Awesome.
Which is a little more noticeable in the first film, but it's also present in the second film.
I'd like to quote friend of the podcast, Maggie Hill on this. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. Thank you, Maggie.
And the other one that I technically already mentioned was, the Anita wearing the purple blouse in the final scene.
Yeah.
Madeline, did you have more little details?
Nope, I think we're ready to move on.
How are we feeling about some unlikely shared universe?
Extremely okay with it.
So I have one that I'd love to start with so that Emilio, you can kind of be the meat of our sandwich.
Wonderful.
Sounds good.
The tofu of our sandwich.
I was born to do this. So yeah.
So Maria's really put through the ringer by the end of this movie, having lost her brother and her lover. And she may even decide to keep her original plan of leaving New York. And perhaps this isn't the first time she's had to escape from our fair city. You see, Maria wasn't actually born in Puerto Rico. She is actually a New York native. And she moved away when she was 9 years old. In the winter of her last year in New York City, she met a mysterious, yet jolly, older gentleman that taught her to believe in magic. What was so particularly magical about this man, you ask? Well, on Christmas Eve of that very winter, this man was legally recognized by the state of New York to be the one, the only Santa Claus. Many believed this to be the work of his brilliant lawyer, but young Maria and her mother knew the truth. This man actually was Santa Claus. However, the two of them could not be left to their own devices with this valuable knowledge. So soon after the jolly old man disappears from their lives, North Pole agents pay a visit to Maria and her mother and explain that they must go into witness protection for their own safety. So they are sent to Puerto Rico, where Maria's mother soon marries a local man with a son named Bernardo, just a few years older than Maria. And because she is so young at the time of this move, she does develop an accent over time. When Bernardo enters young adulthood, he sets off for America, which his stepmother vehemently opposes. But his stepsister soon longs to return to the city of her youth and sets off to join him. She even gets a job at Gimbel's, the rival store of Macy's, where her mother was employed a decade earlier. But after the events that we witness, I find it very likely that poor Maria will return to Puerto Rico and reunite with her mother, and they will likely never return to our fair city.
Probably not, but at least they had a wonderful Miracle on 34th Street.
Yes.
Yes.
Still, I've never seen it.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
I forgot that Natalie Wood is in it. Yes.
Yeah,
I didn't even know.
I watch it every holiday season. It's my favorite Christmas movie. So I watched it about a week before I rewatched West Side Story, which felt very weird to watch so close together.
Fun.
Yeah, that must have been strange.
All right. Well, it's time for me to be the protein, right?
Yes.
All right. Wonderful.
Go for it.
Well, so the last we see of Riff in the 2021 remake and in the original film adaptation of the musical, he's left for dead at the scene of the rumble between the Jets and the Sharks. All indications to members of both gangs is that he is dead. Not so fast, I say. When he is found by the police, he miraculously clings to life, and after a lengthy hospital stay, Riff makes a full recovery. Unwilling to name names, a jet to the bitter end. Riff does some time for his involvement in the criminal activity that Lieutenant Schrank can pin on him. So when he gets out, he's determined to get his life on track, and he enrolls in college. Hitting the books is not really Riff's forte, but he finds inspiration and a purpose that he's always been striving for in his life. Not wielding a switchblade, but a camera. As you see, Riff, now going by his given name Danny, excels in his photography classes, and he sets out to reinvent himself as a photojournalist. He finds himself drawn to a project, one that speaks perhaps to his old life in street gangs. Danny begins to follow a motorcycle gang based out of Chicago called the Vandals, and he captures their goings-on in a book of pictures. I'm going to say he lives vicariously through a lot of that experience as well. Do we know what this is?
It's the Bike Riders.
Yes.
Which I didn't know he was in because I haven't seen it, but Julian mentioned earlier today that he's in that. So thank you, Julian, for the assistance.
Yeah, you're welcome.
There we go. That's right.
Yeah.
That is Mike Feist, who plays Riff in the 2021 remake, but he plays Danny Lyon. He's an actual person in the world. But his photo book was the source material for the film, The Bike Riders.
Yeah.
Which is kind of fun. I liked it. Did you see it?
I did. Underrated movie.
I kind of like it.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. Plus it's something that, that comes out with Tom Hardy and Austin Butler and yet somehow was a flop.
Yeah.
Financially anyway, not critically.
Right.
And also shout out to Jodie Comer, who is the lead actress of that movie, who I absolutely...
So different.
The total opposite of her Killing Eve role.
There you go.
Absolutely adore her in everything that she's in. All right. So we've got one last thing to do for Unlikely Shared Universe. And so Madeline and I are going to do something unprecedented here, which is that we are teaming up for this one.
Holy shit.
Yes, this is a collaborative Unlikely Shared Universe.
We say it's collaborative. Julian wrote it. I'm just helping him deliver it.
Yes, but it should be delivered together for reasons that will become clear. So we are led to believe, and this is in reference to the first film, by the way, we are led to believe that Riff and Tony are tragically killed in the culmination of the war between the Jets and the Sharks. However, what if everything we've seen on screen is an elaborate ruse that they have concocted just to get out of their miserable New York existence? The rumble, the forbidden romance, all of it, a smokescreen.
Let's say that this whole time, Riff and Tony were privately in cahoots with Bernardo, and dissatisfied with urban squalor in which they had grown up, they all agreed to expertly manipulate their friends, family, and fellow gang members, and pretend to kill each other in order to skip town when the coast cleared. This would mean that, yes, those were fake switchblades that Riff and Bernardo brought to the Rumble, and yes, they were all squibbed up with pouches of fake blood.
And now, when the coast actually did clear, Bernardo's fate remained unclear. We don't know that. But you may have noticed that Tony was carried off from the supposed scene of his death by a group of at least some Jets who may have also been in on the scheme and carried him to a secret location where he and Riff could team back up. And when they did, they resolved to go as far away as possible from New York while staying within the U.S. border. As a result, they landed in a remote Washington town about 5 miles south of the Canadian border.
Once established in said town, Tony, who we know to be the more career-minded of the two, invested in some lucrative local real estate adjacent to a scenic waterfall and built a hotel in that location. However, we know from West Side's story of his violent urges he could ultimately not repress. And while he may no longer have channeled those urges into outward violence, he did channel them into numerous sketchy dealings, be it in drug trafficking, illicit sex work, and marital infidelity in the name of personal and business favors. And to shed all visible vestiges of his former life, he assumed the new moniker Benjamin Horn.
As for Riff, he remained the more aloof of the pair, but resolved to cover up that aspect of himself with an appearance of officiality in becoming this town's local doctor. But while he may have been a doctor in title, he was more of a quack in practice, though, to give credit where it's due, also a seemingly reliable confidant and source of inspiration to certain denizens of this idyllic American town, and his new name of choice was Lawrence Jacoby.
Years after reestablishing themselves, in spite of their best efforts, Tony and Riff, or Ben Horn and Lawrence Jacoby, would find tragedy knocking on their doors yet again in the wake of the mysterious murder of this town's greatest upstart, a high school student named Laura Palmer. As the FBI then came in and worked with local authorities to investigate, these two men emerged as suspects in this murder. And whether they were guilty or not, the dualities of their lives, symbolized by the pair of mountains for which this town was named, could no longer be repressed.
I mean, I know it's Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. So both of them are in...
Both of them
appear in Twin Peaks.
And they're both pretty major characters.
Yeah. And this is kind of like, I mean, they've both done a lot of things, but when you look at career highlights, it's, I think without a doubt, West Side Story and Twin Peaks are the two things that they are best known for.
Top of both their list for sure, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I just spent, a portion of the conversation talking about respecting the source material in the remake, and now there we went and just upended the ending of the original film.
That's okay.
It's worth saying too that it is very, very bittersweet to make this connection today. We were planning this unlikely shared universe, but we were not planning for it to happen with quite the circumstances that it has, which is to say that we're recording this the day of the terrible news that David Lynch has passed away.
Yes, it was very affecting, I think, for all three of us in various ways. Julian and I are huge Lynch and Twin Peaks fans, so I think particularly for the two of us. And yeah, so I mean, currently we record very late, so it's after midnight. It's 1:30 a.m., so it's actually the 17th, but we started recording this on January 16th when we found out about David Lynch's passing. So it's been a tough day.
Yeah, it has been. But, to you, Mr. Lynch, beautiful blue skies and golden sunshine all along the way.
Rest in power, David Lynch.
Yes, peace and power.
Cool. I think we've said everything that we could possibly say about West Side Story.
Yeah.
Why don't we say a little bit about what we're going to do next?
Yeah, so we are coming to the close of our current episode cycle about winners of Oscars in the supporting acting categories. And this is where, if you're familiar with our order of episode types, we come upon our close-up, which is usually a profile of an individual person who works in film in some way. But we're taking a bit of a different approach for this episode. And we are, as usual, going to look at 3 movies, but we're going to look at 3 different movies who all feature people who won a supporting acting award for a comic performance.
Yep.
And so this is something we're looking at a few movies that all were released pretty close together in time in the late 80s and early 90s. I think that we're examining this because this is something that we don't think happens so often anymore or since then. Those 3 movies, and we can go through them as a group, are number 1, A Fish Called Wanda, where Kevin Kline won the requisite Oscar.
Number 2, we're going to take a look at City Slickers, which is released in 1991, and that features an Oscar-winning performance by Jack Palance as Curly.
And number 3, we will be covering My Cousin Vinny from 1992, featuring an Oscar-winning performance by Marissa Tomei.
Fantastic. I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm so excited to revisit My Cousin Vinny, and it's the only one of the 3 I've seen, so I'm excited to watch the other 2.
And that is the only one that I haven't seen yet.
Whoops.
I've seen parts of A Fish Called Wanda, but in earnest, I haven't seen all 3 of them in full.
Wonderful. Well, the next time you guys fire us up, that is what we'll be talking about.
Yes.
In addition to this podcast, you can follow us on Instagram at Sleepless Cinematic Pod. I don't think there's going to be any TikTok, but I don't know. Maybe there is. You can follow us at Sleepless Cinematic Pod there too, if it happens to still exist. You can always contact us via email. We would love to hear from you. We really would. Write to us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. I'm not on Letterboxd. You guys are.
Yes. If you're on Letterboxd, you can follow me at my name, Julian_Barthold.
And you can follow me, Madeline, at Patroness of Cats. And if you are listening to us for the first time, thank you so much for finding us. Please consider following us wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if this is the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 40th time you've listened to us, thank you for sticking with us. If you're not already following us, please follow us. We've really grown to love doing this, and it means the world to have our budding listenership grow.
And if you haven't already, we'd ask you, return listener, to please write a positive review and rate us on your podcast platform of choice. This is one of the best ways for new listeners to find us and help our podcast take its next steps. You can also keep it grassroots and tell a friend to tell a friend about the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast. That helps too.
And thank you to our guest, Ron Piretti, who had to head out a little early, which is a shame because then we can't say Officer Krupke, Krupp you to end.
Oh, no.
You just said it. Okay, but we don't want to end this tragically, so... Officer Krupke, Krupp you.